And this is looking great. There's only two things I want you to look at. And so here we'll go to your particle layer. And I'm going to hit the U key on my keyboard. And this is what I love to see. Like, you did a lot of your own experimenting to come up with your own twinkling and sparkling of the stars. That's great. The only change I have to this is your layer management. So you set the in point to this layer to start here, and it's a hard cut on. So the fast fix for that is to hit the letter T for transparency. Okay, so you've got that set to 80. And then I could pick whatever amount of time, like let's say 2 seconds. So I'll go back in time 2 seconds, drag my layer to start there, add a keyframe, change it to 0. So now what's going to happen is, oh, it looks like I dumb lucked into, that's going to come in right as the text is finishing up, which is going to be a nice little touch. So add a little bit to it and just give it that extra little bit of a pop. But I'm loving your colors, and I like the change in the glow here. It's pretty interesting. I didn't dive through your keyframes to how you accomplish that, but it was probably hopefully you just animated the color over time, and I'll get into that in a second if that's not what you did. The last thing is the moon cover. It would be nice if these were eased. I mean, that's up to you as the designer, but I'm just going to show you if I ease these. Let me click the word position, right click, ease them. It's that subtle little bit of slowly moving out and then slowly moving in. And if you wanted, you could go hit your graph editor, then go to your speed graph. And if you slowed more, a little bit more into the end, let's see what we get with that. Now watch it move. See, there's that slow build out, then it speeds up, and then a nice slow end into it. I mean, that's up to you, but I think they should at least be eased just to give it a little bit more of a professional look. But I love the palette, and I like all the things you got going on. Again, I don't have your font because you didn't turn the font into paths, but we'll see what that looks like at the end, and then maybe I can help you with your type layout. But we can see that it looks like you got a linear wipe on it. Okay, so oh wow, really sharp. You used the text animators that I showed you. Okay, so I'm going to, well, I already showed you how to use the linear wipe, which now you know. One moment. But that's a very creative way of doing it. I'm impressed. You showed a lot of deep understanding already of the subject. I'm more than impressed. So I'm really liking it. Like I said, just watch fade in this layer with the transparency. Let me hit T. All I did was I just made the layer a little longer and faded it in over time. I left your opacity at 80 like you had it, and then I just went back like 2 seconds and started it in from 0 over time. But it's looking really sharp. Very pleased with this. I'm going to start a new composition, and I'm going to make 2 solids here. So I'll make this one right here. I should say 2 shapes. And on this one, I'm going to put a fill. I'm going to put a fill on each one. Okay, so watch what happens. I'm going to click the stopwatch on color for fill on each layer, all right? And I'm going to hit the U key for each, and look at what happens. I get a color bar to show how the color is changing over time. So I'm going to jump to the 1 second, and on the first one, I'm going to change it from red to orange, so the bottom one we can see. But on the bottom one, I'm going to set the first keyframe. I'm going to select it, right click, and do toggle hold keyframe. And then at the 1 second mark, I'm going to set it to orange. And watch what happens. See, with the toggle hold, it's giving me a hard cut. And with the, I'll zoom in here. And you can see now I'm getting a gradient on the top one because it's gradually turning from red to yellow. So if you do normal keyframes, you'll get a gradient change. Like right there, you see the gradient changing. And if you use toggle hold, like the bottom layer right here, there's a hard cut from one to the next. So I'll move forward one more second and I'll do my gradient one. We'll go from orange to blue, something a bit more severe, and the same one here, orange to blue. And once again, you see, since I started off using toggle hold, the rest of them are toggle hold because I didn't change it. And now you can see the gradient more over time. I'll do one last color. So here's my gradient layer. And I'll just go to like purple. And then here, I'll go purple as well. And I'll change my render bar and hit the space key. And you can see the one on the bottom does a gradient over time and the other one is a hard cut over time. So that's one way you can change color. Well, two ways you can change color. And I'll drive this point home by deleting these. And everybody's seen this on commercials. I'm going to make a, instead of a shape layer, I'm going to make a solid. So I'm just going to go new solid and we'll do blue. Hit OK. And I'll throw a fill color on it. And let's make that blue again. And I'll put some type on it. So you've seen this in commercials a lot, and hopefully I spelled commercial right. And I'll throw a fill effect on the type. So let me make that white. And I'll click the stopwatch for the color. And once again, I'll go here. I'll click the stopwatch for the color. So I'll select both the layers and hit the U key to see my keyframes. Let me move these to the beginning. And I'm going to make both of them toggle hold. Simply by selecting the keyframe and right-clicking. So if I go forward 1 second and I change the blue to, let's just go yellow. And then I'll change the color of the type to, let's say blue. You're gonna get an instant snap of color. And you see this a lot in commercials and little promos in between shows called bumpers. They're a couple seconds long. So this is a very modern way of designing. Toggle hold to instantly change the color, and you notice we're changing both colors instantaneously at the same time. So we've all seen that a billion times on TV. And the closer those keyframes are, the faster the change will happen, and it'll give you more of a strobe flicker type of look. And while we're talking toggle hold tonight, for the keyframes, I'm going to type the word hello, but one letter per layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my O, I'll take the O layer, use my arrow keys, spread it out to about here. And I'll take my H and I'll use my arrow keys and I'll move it to about there. And then I'll select all my layers and use my line palette to do the rest for me. I'm going to distribute these. So I'm going to distribute along the horizontal center. Now they're in the right order. You can see they're evenly spread out. I'm going to select them all, hit the letter P, click the stopwatch, hover over, and then click toggle hold. So now each one has a keyframe and it's toggle holded. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and hit S. So now I've got a second stopwatch. I'm going to click that stopwatch, right click, and toggle hold. So now I've got a keyframe for each one. So that was a fast way of getting toggle hold for each layer for both position and scale. Just make sure all the layers are selected, then click the stopwatch, and it will ripple through all your layers that you've got selected. So now I can shrink this down a little bit. And I can go forward a little bit and I can pick a letter, let's say the H, and I can move it and I can scale it up. I don't even need to have my keyframes open anymore. So I'm just doing this by eye, and if I hit the U key, you'll see I've got keyframes automatically added for I move them, and it's going to be instant because we're doing toggle hold, and the closer they are, the faster the change will be. Now I'm going to hit the spacebar to preview that. And we've all seen this modern type of look, and the fastest, easiest way to get it is by using toggle hold keyframes and then keeping your keyframes close together and doing a lot of them, having each letter on its own layer, so you've got complete control over your animation. Those are just a couple fun, useful ways of playing around with toggle hold keyframes. Now, I mentioned in my email I'd go over rendering. So I'm going to show you two ways to render. Let's pretend this is my final animation that I'm going to render right here. The first way, the way I prefer you render, is using Adobe Media Encoder, okay? And if you haven't already downloaded it from the Creative Suite, it should auto-download once you try and use it. So here's the way rendering works. Remember, whatever panel you have selected will have a blue highlight around it. You want to make sure that you are in your timeline panel with the right sequence. Okay, so comp 1, I'm going to call this hello. So here's my 2. This one is the homework assignment, and this one is what I want to render. So the sequence you have selected, see it's got the line underneath it, the highlight, showing this is what's selected. This is what's selected now. That's what's selected right now. So this is the one I've got selected with the white highlight underneath it. I'm going to go Composition, because this is the one I want to render, Adobe Media Encoder Q. It's right here. So I just went Composition, Adobe Media Encoder Q. And then you gotta wait for Adobe Media Encoder to load up. And I'm showing you both of these ways because I want you to have options, because sometimes when you're in the labs, the Media Encoder doesn't work. But, you know, if you're at home on your laptop, it should work. And just make sure you've already downloaded it from Creative Cloud, or it should auto-download once you try and run it. So I've got to wait for this to pop up in my queue. Now it just appeared. So here's my queue, because it's highlighted in blue. There's the name of the sequence. This is how I want you to render your homework assignments. H.264, we're not going to change that. This is a video encoder that works on both Mac and PC. So H.264 works on both Mac and PC. Keep it at high bitrate. Okay, so it'll look good, but still be a little compressed and the file size won't be too daunting. Now this third blue text over here, you click once on it, and what this is going to do, it will open up where you're saving it to and what you're going to call it. So I'll put, and then my initials, so that when I get the assignment, I know whose it is just by looking at the file name, because I got to download all of them to grade anyway. Now, so I named it, and I choose where I want it to go. Okay, so I'll have this go to my C drive, and I'll hit save. Then the final step, H.264, high bitrate. There is what it's going to be called and where it's going to. Always make sure you know where your file's going to. It's important because you'll get lost. And then when you're all set, you know where it's going, what it's called. Click the green play button, and it'll start your render. Mine will go very quickly because it's a very short animation and it's not overly complex. So my file rendered, I click on the sequence up here now that I'm done, hit the backspace to get rid of it, and my render queue is clean. That's the first way. This is the second way to render. I'm going to turn off my alpha preview so that you can see there is alpha around this. Let's pretend I need to export this to go over another video clip, so I'm going to want it to be transparent. Well, here's a great way to do that. You go Composition, once again, with the right sequence selected, Composition, add to Render Queue. So I'm going to click Render Queue. Render Queue pops up down here. You don't need Media Encoder to use the After Effects Render Queue. lossless. This will be an AVI file. That might be too big for you. So if it is too large, you can go down to QuickTime. And then RGB, I'm going to change this to RGB plus alpha. And then I'll click OK. And what that's going to do is this will render it, but it'll keep all this alpha. So if I put it over another video clip, you'll have what is invisible here see-through, and this text will magically appear over the video clip that I place it over. So that's an example of when you would want to render transparent video and how to do it. And then when you're all done, like I know what it's going to be called, where it's going, and I'll just hit save, and then the last step, you hit the render button. And then it's done. So I click there, hit backspace to get rid of it, and close out my render queue. And that is 2 different ways to render. And since I did the lab stuff that I wanted to tonight, I'll stop this one early tonight because no one's on, and I'll edit this up so you all see how to edit, because your homework, it's not due next week, but it's due soon. So we'll cover rendering again. I just wanted to show you how to do it and how quick, easy, and painless it is. Now, your render time will be based upon how large your files and how complex it is. Things like particle systems right here will take a little longer to render depending upon how many particles you have. Or if you're using 32 bits per channel with the glow, it might slow you down a little bit. Like I said, just take your time, give yourself plenty of time to render. I mean, you still got time to get your homework done, so don't fret over it. I just wanted to go over that real quick tonight. And again, that was just done using the range selector and 2 keyframes on the offset. It just factored in where I left the text and any changes I did to position, scale, rotation, and skew.